Bonnechere River Bonnechere River Watershed Project is outlined CMD 18H 2.32. I understand that Dr. Lindsay will make the presentation. Please proceed.
Thank you, Kathy Lindsay, for the record. I want to thank you for the opportunity to present, in addition to providing a written submission. I have prepared my remarks in response to what I have become to be aware of in the last couple of days. In part, the CMD submission 18H2.A, which is the response of the Commission to the intervener issues as they saw them. Which of course I only saw yesterday, and also over what's been discussed over the last 2 days. I'm here on behalf of the Bonnechere River Watershed Project, a bit of an odd name for an organization, but we are a not-for-profit Canadian charity. I am the chair, as well as a program volunteer, and I'm accompanied by John Brady, a director on the BRWP board, and Kathy Brady as well, both volunteer in our Celebrate Our River paddle series. We are a community-based, largely volunteer organization. We started in 1999. We are one of only 2 organizations, and the elder, in Renfrew County, focused on watershed stewardship. Both rivers that have watershed-based organizations, including the, we say, Bonnechere, are tributaries of the Ottawa River. So as an organization, along with the other interveners, we are concerned about keeping dangerous and long-lived radioactive and other toxic wastes out of our freshwater, both surface and ground. I'm also concerned, just one moment here, on a personal note, in that my family is 8th generation in the Bonnechere watershed in the Renfrew area. My family has a cottage on the Ottawa River, upstream from Arnprior, for as long as CRL has been in operation. John and Kathy and their family have a shoreline property just downstream from me. I have a PhD in wildlife ecology. I'm a recent retiree from Environment Canada after 30 years. And finally, I'm an adjunct professor and director of the Geomatics and Landscape Ecology Research Lab at Carleton University in Ottawa. So along with other interveners, I am very concerned about the approval of a 10-year license, which will significantly limit, in my opinion, and that of others, meaningful public consultation, such as this one, and perhaps First Nations as well, depending on how those relations develop in future and on the decisions that you make as a commission around that in terms of licensing terms. I appreciate that the Commission and CNL are trying to reassure us that there is no need to be concerned. And certainly you have presented a lot of information over at these hearings, not the least being in the Q&A session. So much appreciated, thank you. However, we are an engaged, well-educated bunch up here in Renfrew County, and like the Algonquins of Ontario, we don't necessarily believe when government tells us that it's looking after our interests, particularly related to protection and conservation of our environment. It is unfortunate that some see this latter concern as an impediment to local economic development. On the contrary, it is the foundation for tourism and outdoor recreation in Renfrew County, as well as significant seasonal and year-round shoreline property development, including the internationally renowned whitewater paddling on the Ottawa River and on the Madawaska River. A shorter license duration will also provide an opportunity for the Commission, as the regulator, and the public to be able to monitor and assess AECL's new ability to manage the new GoCo model. As has been mentioned by other interveners, the recent Auditor General Special Examination Report has identified concerns with AECL, which included not only the significant deficiency in senior management and the board, which has already been addressed, but also 4 additional weaknesses. These include the fact that the board has not yet implemented a formal, systematic process for monitoring and reporting on risks identified in the corporate risk register. The proper risk monitoring and reporting will protect against the possibility of not achieving the initial goal of restructuring. The reporting framework in the corporate plan did not demonstrate how the corporation would measure the overall objectives of restructuring, which were to enhance efficiency and effectiveness and to contain and reduce costs and risks for Canadians over time. I'm quoting from the auditor's report. As of January 2017, the board had not held periodic public meetings for almost, well, let's see, since 2009, as required by its statutory mandate, or to present its annual report and provide information on the GOCO model. Except for the leading contract officer, who was hired from abroad and who has subsequently left, the corporation's contracting team has limited experience in working with this new GOCO model. Now, these weaknesses matter because monitoring and reporting on risk, a sound reporting framework, communication of results to the public, well, to the regulator and to the public, and experienced contract management are important to inform Canadians about risk and the corporation's success with the new GOCO model, which is noted by a prior intervener has been problematic in the UK. In closing, unless the annual reporting process addresses meaningful public engagement, which perhaps it does because it is not clear to me yet all of what's involved there, we think that a shorter license duration, say the 3 to 5 years that other veners have suggested, so a longer duration than we initially supported in our written submission, we feel that would provide for hearings such as this one, which includes not only written submissions, but also oral presentations, and maybe even more importantly, the Q&A from the Commission to the interested parties. It seems to me it has enabled a broad range of interested persons and parties to share and explore our perspectives, and in so doing to become more informed and optimistically able to make better decisions that affect our home place for generations to come. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Question, Dr. McEwen.
Thank you very much for the presentation and the submission. This has come up several times, and I meant at lunchtime to search, but can somebody tell me what this reference to a failed GOCO model in the UK is and what the implications of it have been?
Well, let me start. You made the reference to it. Where did you get that from?
That was the information that was presented in the intervener, Kendra Smith, and that came through the research of the concerned citizens of Renfrew County and area.
Okay, so anybody knows about what is it? Go ahead, please.
Mark Lisinski for the record. So I'm going to give this from my perspective. This will be some of my opinions, having worked over there and watched the GOCO and some of the issues. First of all, I hear a lot of people say that the GOCO has failed in the United Kingdom. Actually, the GOCO has worked very well. They have several different SLCs there. They had 7 at one point, they're now 5 SLCs, site license companies. So the model here is we really have one site license company, CNL. There they had 7 initially. They're down to 5 now. But they have all been making progress in their plans in cleaning up and the decommissioning work and the environmental work. So they have an SLC that runs their low-level waste repository that they have. They have an SLC that runs a Magnox set of reactors that are cleaning up those. They have SLCs that we're running the Doonray site up in the north, a research reactor. The SLC that's referred to is Sellafield. And Sellafield was some of the issues that they had. It was initial stages that they had some issues with that GOCO model. A lot of that, this is my opinion, was because of that was our first GOCO model. There have been lessons learned now from how they established that. Canada was very astute in looking at the United States, how they used the GOCO model, very successful over very many decades. And they looked as well at how things are going in the United Kingdom to ensure that they factor those lessons learned into the model that we have here. A lot of those had to do with the procurement process and the structure that was established there. We won't go into all the detail, but the commercial acumen. And we're beyond that. We're actually in a good place now. The contract has been let, we're making progress, and the incentivization is established appropriately, and we're moving forward. So that's from my perspective, just to help answer your question. I'm not sure if ACL would like to answer, because they did a lot of homework on this as well.
And whether the UK now is an improved version of that?
UK or?
The UK?
Or Canada?
UK. I mean, did they themselves learn any?
They're still they're in the process right now. The Sellafield, they have not recompeted yet, but the other GOCOs, they still are a GOCO model that continues.
Shannon Quinn for the record. I can confirm what Mr. Lazinski has just said, that during the procurement process and during the phase where Natural Resources Canada, together with PWGSC at the time, were implementing the GOCO model in Canada. There were multiple trips to the UK and the US, I should add, in order to understand both the successes and the failures of the GOCO model in those two respective countries as a means by which to put in place a structure and a contract and the terms and conditions that would be the foundation for success for the GOCO model here. So maybe I can just point to a couple of the lessons learned that were factored into the provisions of the GOCO model. So specifically, with respect to the Sellafield example, what was learned at the time was that, in part, some of what led to ultimately the UK government taking back the shares of that Sellafield site licensing company was that because it was their first GOCO contract, that the contract was very specific and rigid in terms of some of its the outcomes that it was looking for, and that they were narrowly focused on items that may have had cost drivers. So in this GOCO model, the performance measures are set on an annual basis by ACL, giving ACL the flexibility to make adjustments as time goes on. But what I can say is that while there may be adjustments in terms of project milestones and priorities, the health, safety, and security, as well as the environment, are never wavering, and there are terms and conditions specific to that in the GOCO contract. And as was said previously, but I'll repeat it because of its importance, that any of the compensation that CNEA would receive under the terms of the GOCO contract are premised firstly on the fact that all of the work is done in a safe way with the protection of the environment in mind, and to the extent that that is not true, all of their fee can be lost in any given year. And so it is first and foremost and core. One of the other lessons learned in the UK is that in order for this model to be successful, we understand that the government oversight organization needs to be
set up for success. And of course, by that I mean that it needs to have the right complement of skills and expertise. And so AECL in the Canadian context is that entity that oversees the GOCO arrangement for the Government of Canada. And when AECL was rebuilt as an oversight organization, there was great care taken to ensure that AECL had experience, people with experience working in the GOCO model, both experience in the US context as well as experience in the UK context, but also that it had individuals with experience working at the Chalk River site, as well as people that had experience working in the Government of Canada context, so that we would have all of those perspectives and all of that experience to be brought to bear to provide effective oversight as well as effective advice back to the Government of Canada. And so just in closing, I would highlight also that while a number of interveners have pointed specifically to the GOCO structure with respect to Sellafield, the GOCO structure has been in place with respect to many other sites in the UK, but also when you look to the US, the GOCO structure has been used there across sites comprising the Department of Energy complex in the United States for many, many decades. And their continuation of that model, I think, speaks to the fact that in the US they've realized some benefit from that model.
Thank you. Question?
Maybe a comment, and it was referenced from the Auditor General report about annual reporting process. Maybe just comment on that. We do know, and we've heard earlier in the day and yesterday, that the CNSC does have a rigorous annual reporting process for all licensees. That process is open to the public and has a public forum. It is in a public forum as we are today. Often in Ottawa, however. So maybe CNSC could comment on the ability to bring that form annually to the publics rather than the publics having to run to Ottawa, particularly in the case of CNL.
Katie Tadros for the record. So that consideration would be for the Commission to make in terms of where in the community they would want to go. And again, as referenced before, in December of 2016, we had 2 regulatory oversight reports in the community of Port Hope because we dealt with the uranium mining regulatory oversight report as well as the nuclear substance processing report, which had Cameco and a few other nuclear substances and uranium processing facilities in the area. So the decision of the community is purely up to the Commission, but staff will be available to go wherever the Commission needs us to go.
I have only one observation, and let me see if I got you. You said that you worked in Environment Canada for 30 years.
Yes,
So
Kathleen,
when-
for the record, yes, that's correct.
So you know how protection of the environment works, better than probably me. So the question is, when your colleagues, I don't know if you heard, the Environment Canada colleague, who has been keeping an eye together with the CNSC staff about all the activities relating to the impact on the environment, when they come up and say, looks, yes, there is a legacy issue, yes, there's a problem with waste, but so far it's being managed properly. You said you don't trust government. So what did you do when you worked there? When nobody trusted you?
I'd have to give you a candid answer. I retired.
Go ahead.
I retired.
This is an open...
Because in fact, there was an attack on science inside the federal government, and we were being silenced and made dysfunctional by the processes that were being put in place by the government who has put this process in place. So it leads to some skepticism for myself now as a citizen and as a chair of a not-for-profit organization that has concerns about watersheds, not only the Bonnechere but Renfrew County more generally, it does make me be motivated enough to learn what's going on here, to come here and spend hours on a chair in order to have an opportunity to listen to what is being said, how it's being answered, how this is being handled, and to have an opportunity to add my voice and perspective to that. And I would say that is what I would be looking for as an individual of the public and as a chair of a leader of an organization as we go forward, particularly with this issue, which the consequences of getting it wrong are huge.
But that's our concern also. That's why we are here in the community and listening to all the inputs, and we'll continue to do so.
And we appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next